Hey, how you guys doing? My name's Sebastien. I'm from Washington, D.C. Currently finishing up my second semester to my gap year. First things first, why did I decide to take a gap year? At first I wanted to go straight to college. I thought that was the best thing for me, and my parents offered up the idea of doing a gap year and traveling. And I was quite against it at first, but because I wanted to go right into college and I was ready for that, I thought. But then I started looking up some projects and gap year programs just to see what they were like. And I found there were a bunch of pros towards taking a year off, being that a year off from schooling can be like the best thing you can reward, first of all, your brain after never having a year off. Or if you'd rather work a job or internship in a specific field or study, it can give you like a head start in college. You can cross cultures by visiting a variety of countries you've never been to before. Maybe learn another language or develop one. You create a whole new group of friends, of course, you can stay in contact for life with. Or you can also learn what it is like to live abroad or on your own. And like with that comes a bunch of responsibilities such as budgeting or timing, and you have to keep track of them all, which is a great life skill. I am currently in Cuba, and unfortunately at the end of my gap year. Um, right now I'm in Havana, and spent the last month in Cuba doing service work for the community. It's like hurricane relief, farming land for families, transporting food to families in rural areas, in painting, a couple painting health centers and orphanages. Um, and prior to Cuba, I was in Chile for 2 months, and I was in a group visiting the Patagonia region and hiking Torres del Paine. Some of the activities I did over the along the way included I was in Viña del Mar. I participated in a language school for a week to build my Spanish. I went to Valparaiso and I joined the Valpo Surf Project to interact with a couple local kids. We then flew down to the region of the Patagonia region of Chile, very mountainous, where we spent 6 weeks. We rafted down the river Rio Baker for several days and made stops along the way at a couple farms where we'd set up camp. Um, I helped establish the new vegetable gardens in Parque Patagonia. Explored a bunch of rural parts of Chile. Hiked a good amount of significant places like Cerro Castillo, the Coyeque Trail, Laguna Altas, and Cerro de Visidero. And we also committed to completing the W Trek, the smaller version of the Q Trek, which is basically a 5-day hike where you carry your own food and all your gear the entire way and camp every night. And then after the W Trek, we spent a couple days in some more touristy areas to rest after the intense hiking. Um, so that trip was from February 13th to May 13th, and today's the 12th, so I actually leave tomorrow. But last fall, from September to December, I was actually in South Africa. So I flew out September 13th to Dubai and connected to South Africa. I would be there for like 3 months. And my plan was to intern for 2 months and join a program for the last month. I mean, the benefits of interning are massive. It can give you it's a great test, first of all, to see what it's like working in a specific field or an area. It gives you tons of information about that field, and it's also really good for a resume or a CV. For that last month, I joined a music studio program through Projects Abroad. Is a pretty big abroad program, and I and that was so I could implement what I had learned from the internship. And like some people thought it was interesting that I chose to do an internship first and then the abroad program after. But for me, I like being placed directly in a work environment so that I learn as fast as possible. And then when I get the time to implement those, I have as much time as I want, and I know more after the internship. Um, so that was my my whole gap year in a quite short amount of time explaining. And I got and going to the question of what I got out of my gap year. First of all, interning, a great way to find out what you do or don't want to do as a career. You explore new worlds. I've traveled to 3 different countries over this gap year, and I've seen so many different cultures and how they live life, and it's created a whole new perspective for me about how others view our world and how I view their world, and we all live in the same one. When I was in South Africa, I lived by myself for 3 months, and I learned how to budget, and I learned how to create schedules for myself. And while I was in Chile and Cuba, I lived with a group and learned how to schedule for group needs, and I created friends that will last me a lifetime. And I got to say, I mean, the time I've spent doing a gap year has built me as a person greatly, and I'm very glad I've done this. So if you are even thinking about taking one, I really recommend it. And yeah, this is me signing out.